Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Peoria's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of October 18th, 2012. We'll start with roll call of commissioners, those who are dedicated and not at the ASU game tonight. Commissioner Golden. Present. Commissioner Strickman.
Present.
Commissioner Spraker.
Present.
Commissioner Marr.
Present.
And I'm Bill Lewis. Next is our opening statement from staff.
If it pleases the commission, we can dispense with the opening statement.
Fine, thank you. At this time, we don't have speaker request forms this evening. We're doing this off-site, and for whatever reason, we ended up with no speaker request forms. So when we get to the items for public and comment on the items, I'll just ask you to step to the microphone, state your name and address if you wish to speak on any items this evening. Under new business, our consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are generally routine in nature, have been previously reviewed by this commission. All the items on the consent agenda will be enacted by one motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of two items. Item 1C, disposition of absences of Commissioners Strickman and Sweeney from the October 4th, 2012 meeting. And item 2C are the minutes from the October 4th meeting. Do I have a motion on our consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Marr.
I move approval of 1C and 2C.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to our regular agenda, new business. Item 3R, it's GPA 12-0002. It's a public hearing on a general plan amendment regarding aggregate mining operations. We'll open the public hearing and start with a report from staff.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis, members of the commission. This amendment is, actually, let me preface it with both items tonight are the first of two Planning and Zoning Commission hearings for the major general plan amendment cycle. So tonight's items are no action items. They're just informational presentations and opportunities to get feedback from the commission and to take testimony from the public if there is any. So moving on to GPA 12-0002 is a major amendment in regards to Senate Bill 1598. This bill was signed into law April 28th of last year. And there's really two major parts to the bill. There's the regulatory reform component and the aggregate mining component. They're not related at all, but the regulatory reform has to deal with inspections, has to do with the city process, certain regulations that do not pertain to the general plan. The aggregate mining component, however, does specifically address the general plan. So tonight's presentation on this general plan amendment is for aggregate mining only. If you read the language, and I'll get to that here in just a second, there's considerable ambiguity in the bill, and you know, over the last several months, staff has attended a number of briefings, meetings with different cities throughout the valley, organizations to try to get some understanding of what this bill actually means, because it is, you know, certainly confusing. I apologize for the graphic running off the screen here. The new language here reads that the general plans are now required to include sources of currently identified aggregates from maps that are available from state agencies, policies to preserve currently identified aggregates sufficient for future development, and policies to avoid incompatible land uses, except that this subdivision shall not be construed to affect any permitted underground storage facility or limit any person's right to obtain a permit for an underground storage facility pursuant to Title 45, Chapter 3.1. The portion that's outlined here in the box is really the part that pertains to our general plan. But within that, you'll see some terms that are a little vague, maybe not as clear as we'd like them to be. So we asked around to try to see what's really meant by, for example, currently identified aggregates. That would imply that we have to hire a geologist to identify aggregates. That's not the spirit of the law. And really, if you read on, it says that those aggregates are identified on maps available from state agencies. So we had to contact various state agencies. We did that. Those agencies, such as the Arizona Department of Mines and Minerals, were actually caught off guard by this bill. They didn't have those maps. They don't have the mapping detail that I think this bill was looking for. Sufficient for future development, referring to the aggregates in the ground that are sufficient for future development. For how long? What does sufficient mean? How much development are we supposed to account for with these aggregates? And how would we get that information from the maps that are available from state agencies? And then lastly, policies to avoid incompatible land uses. So this was not as prescriptive as we were hoping it would be. So the language that we're going to add to the general plan, we try to provide some protections for both residential development and for the aggregate mining operations as well. And I'll outline those here in just a moment. So our approach for compliance, as I touched on just a little bit before, obviously we attended a number of briefings and study sessions to understand what was meant by the law. And uniformly, everyone had approached the different state agencies, from State Land Department to Arizona Department of Mines and Minerals, which seemed to be the last stop for most people, most cities that were seeking this information. And what we received from the Department of Mines and Minerals was a series of data points showing where each registered or approved mine is in the city limits, or in the city's planning boundary for that matter. They don't have to be active, they just have to be permitted. And so that's what we are showing on our map, is our permitted mine sites. Now, we don't have the boundaries of those mines, we just have some pinpoint information. The Department of Mines and Minerals said that probably this year or next, they will have better information showing those boundaries, and at that time, we may update our map to show the actual boundaries on our general plan. But until that time, we're just providing the best information that we have to date. And then lastly, we added a new goal, an objective, and 3 policies, which again, I'll touch on here in just a moment. Now, each of these black circles contains an icon that we added, and it's not showing up very well here, that's why I put the circles around it. Each of these is a data point that was given to us by the Department of Mines and Minerals. Most of them, as you can tell, are along the Agua Fria River corridor. Some are outside of that, some are, well, most of these are inactive, but again, they do show up as being approved, and so we have to register it on our plan. There are, I believe, 11 that are in the city's planning boundary, and I think 9 of those are in the city limits. The new goal that we added, the goals typically in the general plan are the broadest of statements, where we're trying to promote compatible land uses in areas of close proximity to existing or planned aggregate or mineral mining locations. This is a broad term that is narrowed further by the new objective and the policies, the objective being that we are trying to provide equal protection for residential development and aggregate mining operations. This keeps it from being a one-sided objective. We want to provide protection for both uses. And we do that through the 3 policies here, which are discourage new residential zoning where future residences would be adjacent to an existing or planned aggregate mineral mining operation. Policy 4A2 is discourage new mining operations adjacent to or in close proximity to existing residential development, schools, or existing or planned city recreation areas. And the last new policy is promote non-residential development such as business park and industrial uses adjacent to mining operations. So really what we're trying to do is build some framework in. So if we do have new zoning, if we do have a new special use permit for a mine on private property, that we have some tools in place to help regulate, maybe if we're looking for some separation buffers, or even possibly not supporting the request altogether if there's no flexibility on the owner's side. It does give us some opportunity to work with the either the developer or the mining industry. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Gold?
I just have a couple of questions for you, Adam. Are we interpreting the regulations the same way other sister cities are?
Commissioner Golden, we are. There's a range of how people are interpreting these. What we're trying to do is, there's some cities that have, they've designated entire swaths of their river corridor, for example, as, putting a hatch pattern on it, saying this is an area of future aggregate mines. Our philosophy is that we don't want to do that because mining is really an interim use. We don't want it to show up on our general plan as a final or
right.
Permanent use. And I think by identifying a wash corridor, you run the risk of that being an understood to be permitted use in that area. And while there's some validity to that, our philosophy is we want to preserve those washes to the extent that we can. Plus, we're working on some open space planning efforts, and we don't want that land use conflict to go against what we're trying to accomplish with our open space planning efforts.
Okay. I know you talked about the fact that you were looking at permitted mines, but I'm sure we have inactive mines that are not permitted, but they could have residual waste still there. Are you looking at that at all?
Commissioner Golden, we're really not. What this is trying to do is provide future protections or protections for future development. Trying to work backwards is always difficult to do. If we know of those areas, then when we see a development request, either adjacent to or on those properties, then we can address them through zoning stipulations or development stipulations at that time. We are really trying to address the letter of the law in this case, which is to provide those protections for future development. And we're also limited because there's a difference between mining operations on public land, state land, and mining on private property. So mining private property, we actually have a lot more involvement in that process than we do on state land. So we're trying to handle this as delicately as we can, but still be clear on what our intentions are, which is to provide protections for both agencies equally, whether it's development, or residential development, or it's a mining operation.
Okay. And my last question is on, which one is it? Oh, when you were talking about adjacent lands.
Yes.
And it seemed like you were discouraging any kind of usage around these. I mean, not residential, not commercial, not parkland. So. Yeah,
no, we're not discouraging use. What we're trying to discourage is residential properties abutting.
Abutted.
Yeah, existing mines. We may have an opportunity for 150 foot, 500 foot, whatever buffer we can put in there. But we're not discouraging development along those areas. We're just trying to make sure the developments have the protections in place.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions of staff? Commissioner Spraker.
Adam, on the map that you had up here previously, a number of the locations that have been identified were circled. Are all of those locations currently enjoying a special use permit so they can mine?
Commissioner Spraker, no. Actually, some of these, most of these, honestly, have been either on state land, public lands, in which case they're not required to go through the special use permit process, or they were put in place. They became permitted through the state mining agencies prior to the city's special use permit process.
Second question would be, in the instance a property owner, a person goes out, or a company, and they buy a swath of property because they found an alluvial plain that they can mine and what have you, and perhaps because the state is somewhat behind in identifying these resources, as you pointed out earlier, and this person or company goes ahead and they purchase this land before there's really any, and assume it's in the city or what is going to be the city in that sense, is there a procedure by which they would actually go through and talk with the city so they don't buy the property, to find out later on that they're going to have a real problem because it's already planned for residential or something?
Well, there's a couple components to that. So when someone wants to develop a piece of property or mine it, if they're going to mine it, they still have to get their approvals from the state. If they're going to mine, say, state land, that's a process that really kind of excludes the city. Although we do have a good relationship with the state, they do notify us of any activity, and we work with the mining agencies to the extent that we can to put in place any kind of protections, the hours of operation, anything, protections against noise, dust, light, vibration, those kind of the obvious nuisances. If they're mining private property, then that's a special use permit process, and they would have to go through essentially what is a rezoning case. So it would come before this board, it would go to city council for the special use.
And then a third question. Earlier on, you talked about underground storage facilities. What would that be?
Again, not perfectly clear on what was meant by that. The understanding has been that there's some salt mines, for example, where they'll excavate usable salt and then they'll store natural gas in some of those mine areas. And this bill is not intended to impede that from happening. That's the understanding we've had so far. There's really not been an official ruling on anything we've heard so far.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions? I just have one quick one. This is only for new or proposed operations, right? So there aren't any applications before the city right now that are going to be affected by the delays of while we're interpreting this?
There's not. The closest thing is there's been some interest from the Bard Ranch group, which is in the north part of the city there along the Agua Fria, about the Loop 303. And they've been interested in our interpretation of the bill. They want to make sure that if they want to continue the mine that's on their property, that they can. They also want to make sure that this bill is not going to prevent them from developing the residential or commercial or whatever they intend to develop in the future. And we've given them some assurances. Hopefully they're on board with those assurances that we're not trying to prevent any of that. I think Commissioner Golden had the same concerns, that we're not trying to prevent development, we're not trying to prevent mining, we're just trying to make sure that whatever happens, that they're compatible with each other, whether that's through separation or it's through timing of those events.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this. Any comments or questions by any of the commissioners?
Well, I might mention that it's obvious that you did a lot of work on this, and it's very, very thorough, and thank you for your great staff work.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. There is no action on this item. It's informational only. So we will move on to item 4R, which is GPA 12-0003, a public hearing on general plan amendment regarding Lake Pleasant Heights specific area plan. And we'll open the public hearing and start with a report from staff.
Thank you, Chairman Lewis, members of the commission. I did put in front of you revised staff reports that had two very minor changes. One was identifying the co-applicants to the project, which I'll speak more about as I work through my presentation. And secondly was to correct a couple mathematical errors in the land use analysis table, which are rather inconsequential to the overall analysis provided in the report. But I wanted to make sure you had accurate information in front of you and make you aware of the new report in front of you. So I wanted to start this presentation by talking about what a specific area plan is. And typically that's a planning tool that allows for more specific and detailed planning of a particular area. Usually, well, an SAP is incorporated with the general plan and are usually used for unique, large, or challenging property. You know, they can be used for redevelopment, such as the Old Town area that we've done last year, and also for new development, such as Vistancia and Saddleback Heights, which came through last year, and of course for this project in front of you today, Lake Pleasant Heights. The request is to have a specific area plan amendment to modify some land uses and to reposition the project for the future market demands for the Lake Pleasant Heights area. I just clicked the button to make it highlight there. It's a 3,268 acre project area, master plan community. It's located in the north part of Peoria. It's adjacent to Saddleback Heights to the north and west, Vistancia generally to its south and west. And then you can see contextually where it fits in. It's generally bounded by about a mile south of Carefree Highway, Arizona State Route 74 on the north, Blackstone community of Vistancia on the south. That's just south of the Westland Drive alignment. On the west is Litchfield Road, and on the east is the 115th Avenue Road alignment. So many of those streets aren't in place yet, but it kind of gives you a little frame of reference context for where this project's located, because right now it's all undeveloped desert, and it's very difficult to have an understanding of where this actually is placed. The Cap Canal does intersect through the southern part of the project. A large portion of the project area is part of the Hieroglyphic Mountain Range, the southern tail end of that. That's generally the central and east sides of the project area. And this topography is very challenging, and it has significantly influenced the land use pattern. But first, a little history. Back in 1994, the City Council adopted the Lake Pleasant Heights SAP. That included Saddleback Heights and Lake Pleasant Heights, which is an enormous area, over 14 square miles, 9,000 acres in size. There was a division in ownership in the 2001 time frame where the Saddleback Heights was broken off from Lake Pleasant Heights. In 2002, we had the Lake Pleasant Heights specific area plan come forward with its corresponding development agreements, came in the PCD in 2003. And then in 2005, the first amendment to the specific area plan for Lake Pleasant Heights was approved, and there was additional changes to the development agreement with that approval as well. So unfortunately, this cuts off half my project, but what I wanted to demonstrate here was that there's that light blue color. That's the State Land Trust. They own almost half of the development area in this project with 1,396 acres. And the private ownership, which you can barely see now in the white, oh, there we go, in the white and in that pale green shading as it shows up, that's the two different private ownerships. The private ownership in the green is actually subject to some receivership issues as well. So there's some challenges with many different ownership and interests in the properties right now, and it's taken an enormous amount of coordination to get a total planning effort put together that makes this a workable project. And what we're bringing to you today is something that staff and all the ownerships are supportive of. So it's been quite an accomplishment to get to this point. What you see, and this is actually kind of fortunate that I can scroll, but what you see on the left is the existing land use plan. This is the one that's currently in effect, and it was the one most recently approved in 2005. On the right is the proposed land use plan, and so you can see a couple changes, and I'll kind of walk through those right now. The biggest change, I think, that's visually represented on this map is that the golf course and resort that's generally in the center of the left map is no longer proposed on the right map. The market's just not supportive of a golf course resort solution anymore, and staff agrees with that. In replacement of that, there's more low-density residential, more open space allocated, more definition of the open space wash areas. They've gone and expanded open space throughout the property. We do have an increase in open space. The land use plan is refined to reflect what the current and future markets are expected to hold in terms of development. Specifically where the purple is, that's those two purple areas, those are mixed use land use districts. And the intent would that these areas would become, have a variety of different housing and living options. There would be opportunities for intermixing of commercial and residential uses, and these areas become community centers or village centers for the project area. Adjacent to those mixed-use cores are school sites or parks or other amenities that would really create a vitality for the area and a community spirit. So getting into the details, the acreage of the project area is unchanged. It's still 3,268 acres. Residential units have increased modestly, about 600 units or 9.8%. The open space has also increased about 9.2%. So there's almost been an identical increase in the amount of open space as there is in the number of residential units. And then I have in the table a number of different land use changes. There's estate residential, that'd be the 1 acre parcels is down a little bit. The residential low density is up a little bit. Land uses such as medium highs introduced as a new type of land use category. The high density, as I stated before, or the mixed use type of residential has been incorporated with a mixed use residential zoning district, and there's a cap on the number of units that can be created in those areas. So that kind of gives you an overview of that table, and that's reflected in the staff report as well. Now, I grayed out this plan to show you the circulation map. Vistancia again to the southwest, Saddleback Heights to the northwest, and the remainder is Lake Pleasant Heights. This is the proposed arterial network, which is largely the same as what was there before. The big difference is that the circulation tends to follow the lay of the land a little bit better now, so it's not cutting through areas where it'd be more difficult to engineer and actually get the roadway in place. They've coupled that with a refined collector network, which is the collectors front on school sites now. They encapsulate the village cores or the village center areas, and it also they've included some collectors that lead into that western parcel with a circular collector to try to service that area, because it's a pretty rugged topography back there. In the past, land use plans didn't really demonstrate how access could get into that area or how those parcels could be properly developed. Now, there's also a Bullard and Carefree Highway alignment that leads on the south end of this state land piece. Now, this has been removed from being shown on their specific area plan because the topography on that south side of that state land piece, the western piece, is very rugged, very difficult to develop, and probably will not support the development of an arterial highway on that alignment. It's also within 1/8 of a mile or so of the Vistancia Boulevard, which is also an arterial, which is an undesirable situation to have arterials that close to each other. So the applicant and staff have elected to have that removed from this plan. The alignment for the traffic that would be using that arterial is still being worked out and will be refined through the PCD, the Planned Community District process, which should follow shortly after this process is concluded. It may result in some changes to that the collectors that are in that state land piece. It may result in a change to that blue line, which is a Saddleback View or Saddle Peak Boulevard on the north side of North Almirage Road. That may become a minor arterial. It's undetermined at this point, and really is going to require the cooperation of the adjacent developers and Saddleback Heights and Vistancia with Lake Pleasant Heights and the city to find a solution that works for everybody, a regional transportation solution, so that we don't have further alignment issues where they cut through rugged topography. The project was properly noticed. The applicant hosted a neighborhood meeting on September 4th. They had 5 attendees were at the hearing, at their public meeting. They offered some mild comment, no real opinion against or for the project. Staff did receive one email which expressed concern regarding increasing of densities in general in the north portions of Peoria, but it didn't specifically call out any objection to this project, but more it was a general comment that they were concerned about the increase of density and whether the city could properly service through either water, transportation, or other things, the developments in that area. We did send off the project for 60-day review with the adjacent governments. Received no substantial comments other than from the school district. The school district did get us comments about where the school site should be. We've worked with them quite a bit and with the applicant to come up with some good solutions for where the schools should be located. And of note, I wanted to note that there's a water solution for this area that still needs to be resolved. And that will be further refined through the planned community development zoning amendment process, which they expect to be pursuing in the next year. The staff does find that this amendment will improve the land use pattern for the area, the circulation and livability of the area. The project does provide a better balance of land uses to preserve and enhance the neighborhoods, provides diverse housing options and land use flexibility. It reflects and incorporates the 2006 Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Master Plan, which the former plans did not. It provides adequate school site opportunities, supports safe routes to school, placement of schools makes it or adjacent to park where possible, and also near community centers where possible to really foster community centers in the project area. And it does preserve and increases the amount of natural open space that is available for the project area, which is already quite substantial. Now it's even more substantial. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Any commissioners have any questions of staff at this time? Commissioner
Yes.
Spraker.
Again, Ed, a question on, is there a time frame in which this is supposed to take place? As some rule said, if you don't start the project by X date, then we've got to come back to reapprove, or that sort of thing?
Commissioner Spraker, typically not with this process. This process is really setting the big picture land uses for the area. So this can exist in perpetuity without being activated, much like any other land use designation on the general land use plan. Now, once they get to the point where they submit their plan, their PCD amendment, which I expect will come in shortly after this process is concluded, they will be working with amending some development agreements as well, and those development agreements actually prescribe a lot of the timing requirements for when certain things are to happen. But usually, and in almost every case I could think of, the land use does not change, the zoning is in place as an entitlement, and that does not change either. It's just the fine details on how they do it that can be worked out.
Will the applicants have the opportunity to come back in and, they've changed it a number of times for various reasons. Does that ability to change until such time as we have a project that's ready to begin? They could, in other words, come back next week or next year or the year after and change the way the roads are laid out or the densities or the commercial areas are, or put the golf course back in or whatever?
There can continue to be some minor modifications to alignments of the arterials and the collectors, as I noted earlier, but that generally gets ironed out pretty firm through the PCD process, and even more so once they move on to platting the development. As for land uses such as golf courses or increasing densities or decreasing densities, they've generally got to conform to what the specific area plan has outlined for maximum development densities in the area. The PCD, after all the analysis is done with hillside analysis and looking at the Desert Lands Conservation Ordinance, is probably going to result in some lower dwelling unit counts than what they're expecting at this point, just due to the rugged topography of the land and just the realities of servicing those areas.
You mentioned water. Does do the applicants, do they have to drill their own wells, or do they have access to CAP water because it runs through the property?
And actually, I think it's a combination of both. And I could defer to Sean. He might be able to give me a little bit more detail.
Commissioner Spraker, the original concept for water up there, because they're actually because of the rugged topography, there is no aquifer on the property that they can just drill a well into. So the original plan was that their ultimate water solution was to contribute to a CAP treatment plant, a city regional CAP treatment plant. They actually had a plan to drill a well down near the Agua Fria to allow them to start some development south of the CAP a number of years ago, when the prior owners were wanting to get the development started a little bit sooner than the city had. What was planned at the time was called the Twin Buttes water treatment plant. It was actually going to be built on a joint site between this site and Vistancia, just between El Mirage and Vistancia Boulevard, just south of the CAP, just south of Twin Buttes Mountain. That plant is no longer being built, and the city is currently undertaking a master plan in an effort to relocate and find where we can get the CAP treatment. So that's why it's something in progress. We're actually working as city staff to try and figure out where we can get our CAP treatment allocation from, either building our own plant or going in with the City of Phoenix or the City of Glendale's treatment plants.
Thank you. And one more question. The There's a lot of property or vacant land, if you will, to the east of this project and to the south and some to the north and what have you. And how does the city address leapfrogging big projects such as this? And in between, we've got property that is not being infilled, it's not being used. It seems like we gobble up a lot of fresh dirt when in fact, and then we have to extend utilities and the police protection and trash hauling and what have you. I'm not against it, but it's just a question about leapfrogging.
Commissioner, I don't think the city can, because of property right laws, can prevent that from happening if someone wants to do it. But what we do is we put it in place that the development has to pay for itself, has to pay for extension of the infrastructure to it, the roadways, et cetera, and providing those services. So those can become stipulations for the development to occur. The property directly to the east has actually got a lot of topography challenges to it. It's the western side of the Agua Fria, and it's a very challenging terrain. It's actually all owned by state trust land. So. Whether that will develop ever or not, we're not certain. But again, if you look at Vistancia, when it started, it was pretty much a leap-ahead development.
Yes.
And they had to build all their infrastructure, including Happy Valley Bridge crossing the Agua Fria to get their access.
Thank you. No more questions.
Any other commissioners?
No,
But
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Moore?
Question on the parkland. It looks like there's less acreage in the revised plan versus the original
There is
for
that
parkland.
parkland. There's actually a flexible district built in. I guess one of this parcel right here, I believe, is dual designated to be either residential or parkland, and that was on the request of Arizona State Land Division. And they wanted to make sure that they could represent developable value in that area, but the reality is that would be converted over to park when the development comes in, most likely, which would bring it back to an equal amount of what was neighborhood parks prior to that. One of the advantages this plan does have, though, is it does take that extra step in defining the wash corridors and trail corridors and the larger, passive open space areas to an extra degree that wasn't there before. So we do get a little bit more open space. Like I said, about 9% more open space. The neighborhood park part is still being refined, especially for that piece I just pointed out, as we move forward to the entitlement stage.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Golden?
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. And maybe I missed it, but how many exits are there from this community over to the 303? Are there any?
I know that El Mirage leads down to Lone Mountain, which
I
Oh,
might be able
Mountain.
to answer that. Westland Boulevard eventually will connect and have an interchange. So right now, the primary access, the north-south access will be off El Mirage Road. El Mirage Road will extend up to State Route 74, and then it can connect onto the El Mirage Road that Vistancia is currently built. It's by their Safeway development down there, Vistancia Boulevard. That'll be the primary spine for this development, north-south. Right now, until the Westland Road interchange is built, which we were just notified by Maricopa Association Governments, that's probably around 2025, 26 right now for timing. This will get, primary access will be through Lone Mountain. But then again, so when El Mirage is continued, people will actually be able to go down and actually connect on the Vistancia Boulevard / Happy Valley Road to get to 303. But ultimately, there will be a Westland Road interchange, just a mile off their property.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One question, it seems to me like there's a lot of development between Happy Valley and up, and I can't remember, it's about 25,000 homes are going in. Is that about right? Isn't Visconti 17,000, and then you have...
Commissioner Golden, I think the 25,000 figure seems a little high. I know they.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, the total figure for Vistancia, for example, they just recently reduced their entitlement from 15,600 down to 10,500.
Oh, okay.
What areas are you referring to as far as
okay,
development?
so really what I'm trying to get at is Viscontia was supposed to build 2 golf courses, and they decided not to build any, except for the one over at Trilogy. And then these folks have decided not to build any golf courses. And I can't remember, does Saddlebrook have a golf course?
Yes,
They
they
did,
have.
okay. So there'll be 2 golf courses then for the 20,000 people.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right. Now, Vistancia still has the option to, I think they're entitled for 2 golf courses and up to 3. So they do have the ability to build another golf course in the north part.
Actually, I'll correct that. They actually currently have 2 because the Blackstone course is built and the Trilogy course.
right.
So they're-
But Blackstone is private.
yeah. The next, yeah, they do have, if we include that, then it's actually, they have another course planned north of the CAP, and they have rights for a 4th course, although they have to figure out the water balance for that. They have water
Okay.
currently assigned for
Okay.
3.
So there is some possibility there'd be a couple more golf courses up
Right.
there. Okay. And when they took out the golf course, it seems like this, I guess I would have expected more open spaces or parks because usually they put golf courses in places that they can't really build a house. But I suspect this is only the initial plan, and as they go and they start plotting the houses, we're going to end up with more open space.
That is correct. And once they move on to the entitlement stage, doing the amendment to the plan community development, they're going to have to apply the Desert Lands Conservation Ordinance and the hillside analysis, and that's going to show a lot of washes and other terrain types that are difficult to develop that cannot be developed with the units they thought they might be able to get.
So these numbers may
So
change.
these numbers could change.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Good report.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Does the applicant wish to speak, or any of the applicants wish to speak on this item?
Well, in the interest of time, we've consolidated to one quick speaker for you.
Thank you.
My name is Lynn Lagarde, Earl Curley Lagarde, 3101 North Central in Phoenix. And I represented the former ownership of Lake Pleasant Heights when we did the SAP amendment and a PCD rezoning 7 years ago. I can't believe it's been 7 years since we did that. And I'm really excited to be back working on this project. This is an incredible piece of land. I've done hillside projects in Scottsdale, Desert Mountain, Desert Highlands, Estancia, and this is that kind of first-class property. So it's a good project to be involved in. With me tonight, and I'll have them raise their hands and wave, since I can't see them behind me, are Tim Connors of Iota Purple, one of the private ownership entities. And with Tim, working with him as planning consultants, are Max Vahid and Steve McCormick. Also, Mr. Gary Torium, the other private ownership. And I want to make a clarification. Mr. Torium is now, and Ed may not have known this, but this is the latest update. Mr. Torium is in control and ownership of the property, and the receiver is no longer involved, which will uncomplicate our lives. And if you have any questions about that ownership situation, he will be happy to answer them for you. With him is Alan Bodwin, his planning consultant. Gordon Taylor of the State Land Department has also been working with us. Gordon had to be in Flagstaff tonight, couldn't be here. Wanted to say, of course, they're supportive also of the plan. Now, in the 7 years since the adoption of that first specific area plan amendment, there have been a number of changes in the city's infrastructure, and you just heard one. The big one was the city is no longer doing the Twin Buttes plant, and the former SAP and PCD zoning were really based on that plant. And also, the regional transportation shifts are being looked at, as well as the home buyer market and the changes that have occurred in that market. They've all necessitated the adjustment to the Lake Pleasant Heights specific area plan. I do, however, want to assure the Commission this is not a process that you want to go through on a regular basis. It is long, it is highly time-consuming, technical. Once we put this in place, we certainly hope we have it right for the next development wave, and you won't see another specific area plan amendment, hopefully, from our group. The owners also wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to really improve the planning that had occurred, to refine it, to make it more responsive to topography, to make it more responsive to what the city of Peoria had done in the meantime and their goals and policies. And of course, the goal is to make it more attractive for development, to have that happen. And by the way, Vistancia is to the west and south, so there is continuous, development up in this area. And I will tell you that seeing these large pieces of property planned as master plan communities is such an incredible advantage than if you had little piecemeal development. I've lived in McCormick Ranch, the first big master plan community in the state, and that has still maintained its value and is a wonderful place that people want to live. So having owners who are willing to make the investment that it takes to do this kind of planning is really an advantage to the city. Now, the timing of Lake Pleasant Heights repositioning their property was really coincided very fortuitously with Vistancia replanning, Saddleback Heights replanning. So having all of these three major master plan communities being able to engage in some sort of coordinated efforts will really result in better infrastructure planning, better solutions, and it's very beneficial that the timing just came together in a very good way. Now, the owners have been meeting and their planning consultants regularly for about 6 or 7 months with staff, which is why I say we don't want to repeat this process anytime soon. Reviewing with them development alternatives and refinements to the SAP, and really getting their input and guidance. And the result of all of that really cooperative effort is the plan before you tonight that comes to you with full staff support, full ownership support, having overcome a lot of hurdles. Mr. Boyd gave an excellent report, both his written report and his presentation tonight, very comprehensive. We have no detail to add to that, you'll be pleased to know. But the planning consultants are here to answer any specific questions you have, and I will definitely refer to them. This is very technical. I'm not going to try to answer any technical questions. We just wanted to also just take the opportunity to review with you what we see as the benefits and advantages of this current plan over the initial one that I represented 7 years ago. First of all, the land uses themselves have been better configured in response to topography and natural conditions, with higher densities consolidated on the flatter portions, and the roadway alignments, as Mr. Boyd has pointed out, have been better adapted to the natural terrain. One of the biggest improvements I see in the plan, as someone who represents these kind of plans all over the valley, is that those mixed-use commercial nodes with higher densities have been clustered into more efficient, pedestrian-oriented, walkable areas with greater open space, rather than being more dispersed as they were in the older plan. Also, they're more logically located at major arterial intersections. The parks, open space, and trails have been better arranged to implement the city's parks, recreation, open space, and trails master plan, which was adopted after the original SAP amendment. The open space, as you've heard, has been increased. The golf course has been eliminated, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One of which is Blackstone, immediately to the south. Membership has been open, it has become semi-public. But another broader one, I think, appeared in the Arizona Republic several weeks ago. I don't know if you noticed it. City of Phoenix and the problems with their golf course. There's simply less demand. And they're very expensive to operate, and the city was having difficulty. And so you don't want to overbuild your golf courses. And so that's one of the reasons why this one was eliminated. But again, the open space and parks, there are other recreational opportunities that I think the plan offers. Just wanted to point out that, as Mr. Boyk said, the modest increase in density, that little 10% would not have triggered a major general plan amendment. If that's all we did, we wouldn't be here. But there were more significant changes and benefits that could be done by doing the general plan amendment, the specific area plan amendment, and that's why it was done. Again, if you have any questions, planning consultants are here. We know there'll be another hearing at which we'll just again be listening, and would love to hear input from you as well.
Thank you very much. Any commissioners have questions of the applicant or applicant's planners? Well, thank you very much. Must have answered all of our questions with the presentation. Good. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? I don't know if there is anybody. Seeing none, then we'll go ahead and close this public hearing. Any final comments or questions from commissioners?
I have one out of a
Commissioner Spraker, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a curiosity question. All of this project, it's integrated, it depends on, I don't know what, there are 3 owners, essentially, so there's the state and the purple people. And the question is in the event that one of the owners, the state or one of the 2 private owners, decide they want to go their own way, for whatever reason, they just have a falling out, can that take place? And then the plan goes by the wayside?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and gentlemen, I'm not sure of your name, and staff. I just want to give you a little history, and then I think I can answer your question. My name is Gary Torium, and some of you probably weren't born when I started being involved in this land. All of the land that formed that North Peoria, which is Saddleback, Vistancia, and this project, I brought into the city through land exchanges with the Bureau of Land Management, an annexation that was quite visionary 20-some years ago. And that's about the time we started bringing this land, and we had a vision for North Peoria to go out there and block up large tracts of land to avoid that whole area being fragmented in small acreages, which would have rendered the opportunity for master plan communities moot. And that was starting to happen, and I worked with the mayors back then. In fact, I started with the city of Peoria when we met in the old hangar building. And the council sat on the staff on the pedestal, and no one could stand without probably bumping their head in the ceiling. So to answer your question, there's a lot of history that's been involved in this property, and there's a great passion in seeing it come to fruition. And I'm pleased to see that Vistancia's moved forward. The Diamond Group has the Saddleback portion of that property now. They're capable developers, and we are committed to working together to make this project happen. Had we elected to go our own way, it would really have fragmented the property to where the opportunity to bring services, transportation, and a cohesive plan impossible. So we have pledged a cooperative spirit, and we are undeterred because the project either makes it as one or it sinks. It cannot function in a fragmented portion. Now, once the planning is in place, that doesn't mean that components of the property wouldn't sell at different time frames. But from a planning point of view and a comprehensive master plan for that property, it's going to be one project, and we're committed to it, and that's the only game in town.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Well, I have to say thank you, staff. It was a great report, and thank you for the added comments from the applicant. We're really going to watch this and look forward to this thing coming to fruition, like you said. Exciting times up there. This is an informational item also, so there's no action required by the commission. So next up on our agenda is a call to the public. Does anyone wish to address the commission this evening on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, is there any reports from staff?
Yeah, the only report I'd like to put out there, Commission member, is I'd like to, I think you've all heard, but we just like to say, Ed Boyk will be leaving us, sadly. He's taken a position with the town of Buckeye, but he's been a pleasure to work with, and actually I think has added a lot to the city, and we're sad to see him go. So, but this is a promotional opportunity for him, and we're glad for him to move on in his career.
Well, thank you for that. We wish you the best of luck. We're going to miss you. You've done a great job. It's been great working with you over the years. We are definitely going to miss you, but congratulations on the promotional opportunity. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great for you. That it? Okay. Any reports from any commissioners this evening? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.